12 hours.
Well, you can have one after the after show. Mute the mic.
Is mine still that bad?
The river's wide that I could not swim across it, so I convinced myself I'd walked up on the waves. The river's wide that I could not swim across it, so I convinced myself I'd walked up on the waves. And I don't want to waste my life. And I wanted to feel as safe as they do, but the more I live, the harder to believe that their God above knows the first thing about love, or goes along with every rule they make up. But I don't want to waste my life thinking about the afterlife, thinking about the afterlife, thinking about the afterlife, thinking about the afterlife.
Hello, and welcome to the EU edition of the Lion Ghost Show, and this is Sir Strife, and today we have Stephen Hawkins, Jake Binder, Phony Beetle, Mannix, and the Realist Nihilist.
Hello?
Yeah, you're on now.
We seem to be getting TV as well in the background. That's
Yes, we hear
that's
it.
always a good start, isn't it?
Yeah.
Alright, so today, hopefully, I almost certainly will go off topic. Always in a great way, though. Shall be somewhat more about secular ethics. One of the most popular topics that comes up usually regarding philosophy and atheism and secularism on the internet is whether God exists. And to be fair, it's usually one of those repeated topics. One of the things that doesn't seem to come up as much as it should is, in my opinion, secular ethics, as in ethics without a God. It's a 3,000-year-old subject, older than philosophy, probably older than philosophy of religion itself, of which there's many different answers to it. I mean, does anyone have any different thoughts on, well, how they go about their day-to-day lives and how they approach things ethically? How they decide what to do?
Just to note, Neo wants to be in. And
Well, obviously we can add people as time goes on and we kickstart the conversation.
Well, is anybody there besides me and Steve? Jade, you back?
Yeah, I think Jade's...
Yeah, I'm back.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, did you hear what we said?
Yes.
So what are your thoughts on this whole subject of secular ethics?
Or how do you go and justify things ethically? How do you know what the right or wrong thing to do is?
Well, basically, partly because from my upbringing, but I think it becomes more complicated than that. I think that our ethics originally derive out of the fact that we are a social species, and we have evolved that way. I mean, if you look at our closest ancestors, you look at the, chimpanzees, they're also a social species. And in one of the arguments that the creationists, which is a subject I'm, tend to be a little more familiar with, use against, say evolution, is that with evolution, which of course they consider godless, you have no ethics. You have no, basis for, good or bad or whatever, because it's survival of the fittest. Well, survival of the fittest doesn't mean the most vicious or most violent or, who's going to, be able to kill everybody out. It means those survival traits which makes a individual survive and which makes a species survive. And of course, in a social species, those are the traits which make that species survive. So we have evolved to cooperate. Obviously, we're not perfect at it, but that is a big part of it. So for a species to survive like this, a social species, we have to learn not to kill each other, not to hurt each other, and to take care of the old and the sick. And I think that's really the basis of our ethics. We create our own ethics, but it comes from our being a social species. And my personal ethics certainly come from my environment and my upbringing and the decisions that I have made based on my environment and my upbringing. And when you're a small child, you're told not to hit because it hurts. And if you get hit, you know it hurts. And you learn these things. It's a combination of experience and teaching. But it's not dependent on a religious worldview. It's dependent on a social worldview. In a different place, in a different time, my ethics might be to participate in killing the next village because they had resources that we needed, and our tribe was paramount to us, So I guess that's my take on it, basically.
Well, one of the things I picked up from that, you said that humans are naturally sociable. You said that a fair few times. Do you mean that humans will be sociable for sociability's sake, or, in other words, will be empathetic or sympathetic for its own sake? Or is it a good in itself?
That's a good question, and I think it's probably a combination. We know that we fit in society by being sympathetic and empathetic, but I think it is natural to some people, but not to others. Remember, there are people who are sociopaths, and most sociopaths aren't out there killing, murdering. They may be running banks, but even sociopaths learn how to get along. They may have to fake the emotions, but they know that, I have to, if someone is hurting, I need to be sympathetic because that is what I'm supposed to do. That is what everyone else does to fit in. I'm sympathetic. Even if I'm faking the sympathy, I'm sympathetic. But some of it is natural because, for example, look at the way we all go, puppies and kitties, and there seems to be and not just in humans, but in other animals, there seems to be I'm trying to think of the right word, but we are naturally
drawn to the cuteness?
Yes, thank you very much. Drawn to the cuteness. And there are certain features that, well, at least in mammals, all baby mammals have. They have the big heads, they have the short noses and things like that. So there are certain features that we are drawn to. And this could be an evolutionary trait to keep us from killing our own young.
actually,
But
I was gonna say, sorry to interrupt, but the whole,
that's fine. Go ahead.
well, the whole thing, that you brought up earlier, a few seconds ago, the whole, was it because of our, evolutionary history that, that we are social beings, right?
Yes.
I would say actually it's required in a sense, like you need two to tango because we have, we're not hermaphrodites, so we can't, we can't have sex with ourselves, so
Right.
we need to have two, two individuals to actually breed with. So,
But
what?
Well,
right.
I'd question.
We're also just one quick thing, and we're also fairly weak.
Well, yeah, that's
We don't have great eyesight. We're not incredibly strong. So just for us to survive, we need a tribe.
Well, this doesn't come across very sociable to me. I mean, the way you're putting it across, or the way I'm hearing it, is that you're saying that people are sympathetic, are empathetic, and look after other people, is because they do it so they themselves have the best chance of survival. For example, I look after other people. I look after other people because I will need their help later on, or I'm naturally sociable with people of the other gender because of my need to reproduce, or because I want to reproduce. And a lot of it becomes.
So it's a means to an end, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's coming across less that we're naturally sociable, but more we're sociable because we're selfish. We're sociable because we're self-interested.
Well, I would say no. Because if we were selfish, then in the end you'd be alone. If you're selfish, if it's only for you, then what's the point of you taking care of that woman and stuff? If you just want to,
Yes, but
you can
but,
rape, you can go and rape her and what?
Yeah, but we socialise with other people. We form groups, we form cliques for our own self-interest. I mean, let me take through a famous thought experiment, a Lockean thought experiment. Imagine we're in a state of nature, so there's no government, there's no order, there's simply us in nature all trying to collect food and survive. Everyone would have varying degrees of individual power because no one's formed cliques yet, no one's formed groups yet. Everyone has their own ability. They have their own stick, for example, to hit people over the heads with. And some people will have bigger sticks. Some people will be stronger than other people and be able to steal the food from them. And if people try to steal food from the stronger people, they can beat up and kill the weaker ones. Now, the only way for the weaker people will certainly be in the majority. That's just how things will work. But the problem is then, of course, how do these weaker people survive? Well, they think, I need to survive, I want to survive, I want to keep eating, I want to keep living, I want to reproduce. I'm going to form a group with other people. And so when I form this clique with other people, we're going to say to each other, I'm not going to steal from you, I'm not going to kill for you, and in return we're going to protect each other, and we're all going to fight off the big bad bully. Because when there's 10 of us and only one of them, it doesn't matter how big their stick is, we can absolutely beat the crap out of them. And that sounds a lot more selfish than a lot more I'm being selfish than I'm being sociable. It sounds a lot more like I'm being sociable because I'm looking after myself than I'm being sociable because I just want to be sociable. It sounds a lot more like I'm being sociable because I want something for myself than being sociable for its own good.
Can I address this point?
Go ahead.
It's impossible to address it from another point of view. You can't not be yourself unless you somehow find a way to be the collective instead of part of the collective. There's no way to address it. And yeah, you identify that the collective is in your own self-interest. But that doesn't mean that you discard or discount their feelings, because it is self-gratifying to you to account for those feelings. To not step on another person's problem, that's self-gratification. You can't, okay, there's a difference between selfishness and self-gratification. And I think that's the most important thing that we need to address here. Because self-gratification does not necessarily mean selfishness. Selfishness means inherently thinking only about yourself and discarding all others, whereas self-gratification means accommodating yourself to the highest degree, right? So in a social environment, you're not being selfish by being social, but you're being self-gratifying, and there is no other position to take. You have to gratify yourself because you don't have any other option. Even if you decide to kill yourself, you're still gratifying yourself in a sense, because that's what you want to do. If there's no way, because you can't be the collective unless your perspective extends through more than one person. You can't be a collective. So self-gratification is inevitable, but it's not necessarily selfish, is what I'm saying, because selfishness, I think, would be more accurately defined as at the expense of others.
Yeah, that's kind of what I would say would be selfishness also. Like raping a woman, you know, and stuff like, hey, if you want to just reproduce, why not just rape the woman and just leave her and just go away? That would be, I guess, selfish, right?
Right, or you know, you could keep her chained up until the baby comes, right? And just to make sure you properly...
Yes, that's it.
That kind of thing? Yeah, no, that's selfish. That's at the expense of others. But self-gratifying means that you have these urges to reproduce, but you wouldn't feel good about yourself if you went about it a means that you don't like. So you still have to interact socially, but that's not at the expense of anybody else. You know, I think a true selfish person has no empathy.
Well, because they'll do whatever.
Well, let's say something about selfish, something about self-interested, because I will start doing that at least for a moment. Let's say if you're self-interested and you're not strong, would it not be very much in your self-interest to form a clique, form a group to protect yourself?
I don't get how that's selfish, though.
Well, if I want to promote my own life, promote my own can I finish this? If I want to promote my own happiness, promote my own life, promote my survival, and I do that best in a group rather than on my own, then I'm doing it for my own interest. For my own interest, I'm forming a group.
Yeah,
so that's very self-interested.
But the problem with that, though, is how exactly does the group actually, like if you, unless you want to be a dictator and be just everything is for you, a monarch, why would people follow you then? Why would people even want to give a shit about you? Why would they even want to help you?
Because other people are in the same circumstance.
But
I mean, it's not the case. It's not the case if there's just one person. I mean, if there's one person weak and one person strong, and no one wants to form a society, then society's going to rise. People won't naturally do it. But if many people have a need to form a society or to form a group to protect each other, then people will realise, right, we can either form a group, in which case we'll redact some of our natural rights and replace that with security and protection, then that's the best way forward. If we don't do it, we'll just all die out.
Right, but
that's how people consent to be ruled in that sense. And that's how morality forms. People consent to certain moral systems, and then these moral systems become ingrained in society as never systems which work best, help everyone else, and help the aggregate number of people out, or help the most people out.
Well, yeah, I would say morality is what works. If it doesn't work, it will die out. Right?
Well, I mean, to address your point, you said they're not doing it just for self-interest. They're doing it to, like, if you start a group, to propagate yourself or whatever in that sort of situation. Yeah, but that's the point, is that you can't do something that's not in your self-interest. Because even if it conflicts with your bodily self-interest, it doesn't conflict with your mental self-interest. It's impossible to do anything that goes against your self-interest. So, like, that's not to say that people can't be altruistic, because empathy could be in their best interest.
Yeah,
and that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I completely agree.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're selfish, because, like I said, selfishness is at the expense of others, and only with regards to the self, and not with regards to other people. Essentially, I guess everything is in regards to the self, but you can't escape that.
Well, but let me disregard the term selfish, as I'm referring back to the term self-interested. People are naturally self-interested. People naturally will aim for their own good. I think you basically agreed with that point.
Right.
And I would say that's when the basis of morality forms. It's a social contract. It's the idea where we start universalizing our demands on other people, and say we'll put these same constrictions on ourselves. So the moral demand of I don't want you to kill other people because I don't want to be killed myself, or because I don't like people killing, or I don't like seeing people being killed. And in return, I'm not going to kill people by myself. I'm not going to kill people myself. Or I'm not going to steal from you without... I'm just not going to steal from you. And in return, you can't steal from me. And then these moral systems form. And obviously this is very crude and completely different to what we have today, which I would say is when we may say, I won't kill you in this circumstance and you won't kill me in this circumstance. I mean, I'd say morality has evolved to a point where we now have people going, I won't kill you unjustly, and in return you won't kill me unjustly, or I won't kill you without fair trial and you won't kill me without fair trial.
But that's the point. What is decided as fair and what is decided as good or just, those are all arbitrary terms. They're not concrete. They're only intersubjectively relevant.
Yes, they are intersubjectively relevant. That's what I class ethics as. It's a universal prescriptivism. It's a universal... It's as prescriptions or commands you prescribe to every person. If there were no people, there would be no morality.
Right.
So it must be intersubjective. It's objective to a community existing inside of it, but the community can still at the same time change it. No one individual can remove himself from the moral contract, but if enough people reform it, then it will change.
But I'm just saying, even if it's not objective in the society, it's just there's a huge difference between being intersubjective and being objective in a society, because even if you're in a society and you agree with most of them, you can disagree with certain principles, and then you can perform those acts based on whatever whimsy you prefer. You know, it's not...
Yes, but I mean, even if there was an objective morality, you can say, I disregard this objective morality and act on any whimsy you want. You would just be immoral. And it's the same with subjective morality. If you do something which the majority of people class immoral, then you're committing an immoral action.
See, that's the problem. I have a problem with identifying anything as objective that is not or could not, if that makes sense. Anything that is objective necessarily is, right, regardless of whether or not you perceive it. And you have evidence, you have reasons to believe that something is. Like, you have reasons to believe that that concrete exists, or that there's an external world. I ended to call it neo-atheist. But there's a reason you have to believe them. So that's why we come to these opinions that they are objective. It's still a subjective opinion that they are objective, but when you classify morality as objective, you're saying morality is, and there is an essential good. And when you like, you'd have enough trouble defining how anybody could be immoral, by how anybody could not form to a moral code, because that really doesn't make sense to me. If objective morality just is, then how can there be a not moral action? Because you would be ascribing morals to something that is, like, all actions are moral or immoral. How do you define that? How do you decide which actions aren't? They are still actions, right?
All right, Ben, let me try and address that. Firstly, again, it's not objective in the sense that it exists independently of people. It's wholly dependent on people. It's dependent on the universal community of people. It cannot be changed by one individual, and one individual cannot suddenly leave or enter the universal prescriptive contract, but at the same time it's not independent of the whole being. And what is good and what is bad, I can generally ascribe it to what can be very slightly crude but pretty accurate sentence: if it goes against the general preference, if it goes against net preference. So if a vast majority of people say this is immoral, and a vast majority of people say this is very, very bad, then it's very, very wrong.
Right. I mean, but this is what I'm talking about. Like, for a proponent, I'm not saying you're a proponent of objective morality, but for any proponent of objective morality, you say that immorality is the antithesis of morality, right? That's what it means. It's something that is immoral means the antithesis of something that is moral. So if you look at anything else that is objective...
Well, can I just give an example? Because I don't class it as binary. It's not the binary system. It can either be moral, immoral, or neither.
No, well, I wasn't...
So, for example, giving to charity is moral, is a very good thing, but not giving to charity isn't... giving to charity is a very, very good thing, but not giving to charity is a very, very bad thing. I still class it as morally something we ought to do, and as such, not doing it is pretty bad. But it's not, for example, killing someone. It's not stealing.
But that's what I'm saying. You're not. I don't think you're a proponent of objective morality. This is only to address people who think that there is objective morality, right?
Okay.
This is only like for people who are think that there is objective morality, who don't. Because when you think of something that is moral, it's just something that is, right? That's the way it is, and that's the whole is-ought dilemma. So if you're saying there is objective morality, then objective morality exists, and that means that not objective morality does not exist. It doesn't make any sense. It's the antithesis. So when you get to a point where you look at any other objective thing in reality, you say this desk or anything else. What is the antithesis of this desk? And
I just say.
It's not
even. I was going to just come up with one point, and we'll also be taking questions from the audience in a moment, just after my point.
Just to note,
the one thing I would say is that you can still have relative or intersubjective morality and have an objective morality. So, for example, I don't class there being any difference between universal intersubjectivism and objectivism in any meaningful sense. But you may have an objective moral system of maximise pleasure or maximise preference or do what comes naturally, and at the same time have in a community a relative moral system of once a day, once a day feed the animals, help feed the animals. You can have a prescriptive, you can have prescription, you can have an obligation that's objective and an obligation that's relative. You can have something that you ought to do objectively and something that you ought to do in that society.
It's there's a lot to address in that, but I don't know if I can. You said you wanted to take questions from people, so.
Yeah, feel free. Just anytime a question comes up, we'll move on to that.
Just a note, I heard someone calling on another person's end. Was it Neo?
Yeah, Neo Atheist was calling me.
Yeah. Should I invite him?
I don't care what you do, dude.
I know, but just because frickin' Steve was talking to him earlier. So I'll invite him.
Invite him in, man.
Okay, give me 5 seconds. Where is he? So even, do I have him? There he is. There he is.
Hello, you beautiful, beautiful atheist.
Hello?
Hey, realistic, I love you. You look like Jesus. To me, you will always be Jesus. I actually think Jesus may have been a nihilist, personally.
Okay.
All right, so on to the topic then. Nihilist, what would you respond to that? How do you respond to my point that you can have both a relative morality in a community or obligations in a community and an objective obligation to all of humanity? And more.
Well, I think that there is, when you said there's something you ought to do to maximize an objective morality, which would be the maximal happiness or propagation of pleasure of sorts in a society, I would say that's an argument from ignorance, because what is pleasurable to one person may not be pleasurable to the collective, and that's all arbitrary.
Well,
to maximize means to get the most people happy that you possibly can, and that also doesn't necessarily mean it's a good act, because if you're put on an island with 7 people and there's only one woman and they all think that they should take turns raping that woman, that would be pleasing the collective and not necessarily be objectively moral, right? And it would
let me address that, because I think you can very easily very, very easily justify not raping the woman as a moral obligation. And it just goes to this: would you want it to be done in your situation? If you had a woman, would you want to be raped? And the mass answer would be no. So the response would be that is immoral. I mean, the point is you take. The point is you take. If you could be in that situation in the future, would you want that to happen to you? And you'd go no. And as such, the majority of people would want the maxim "do not rape people" to be true. And as such, one should hold to it. On top of that, and can I just finish my point? On top of that, the woman's desire not to be raped, and the pleasure she gets from that is many times greater than the pleasure of the 7 individuals. I mean, on an almost infinite scale.
I'll address your point after Neo goes.
After Neo, yeah.
I would like to get Jade's opinion on this, seeing how she's the only female in the conversation. I think that she is the most justified from an objective stance to answer this question if she's here right now.
Yeah, if all 5 of us decided to rape you, how would you feel?
I think she's a lesbian, so I don't think she'd let anybody.
Yeah, so that would definitely be objectionable. And I would probably do my very best to eliminate you in some way or another, even at my own expense.
All I got to say, though, Jade, is remember, I'm willing to change for you.
Yes, I know, but that's not the subject of this discussion.
As I was saying before, though, I am willing to change and go through operations to become more pleasing to your eyes.
Yes.
I think D has the right idea. I also would imagine a majority of men would rather not rape, but I could be wrong.
Yes.
It's not particularly relevant to the hypothetical because empathy is not relevant to the hypothetical. You're saying put them in a situation where they experience the quality of the woman. They can only speculate whether or not they would want to be raped as a woman because they can never be a woman. So you're applying empathy to the situation, which I'm saying there is no empathy.
They could be created into a woman. I mean, there are operations to turn them into women, realistic.
I mean, the point is you can still rape a bloke, you can still attack physically and sexually a bloke. It is not one of the rarer occurrences in rape. Homosexual rape is quite common among rape in general. But the thing is, if you were in the situation of the woman, you would say, I do not want this to happen, and thus you wouldn't want it to be done. I mean, the premise is known as the individual position. If you did not know where you were, or where you'd be in this cycle, if you did not know whether you'd be the rapist or the rapee, what would you hedge your bets on?
Right, but this is the point. You're talking about an experience position in which you can't hold, and if you could hold it, you could posit that every action is immoral. Just because you define something as sentient, like in a woman's case, does not necessarily mean that it's immoral to do something to that sentient being. As far as we know, she is sentient, but in the same situation as a solipsist, which Witt argues is the default position. Can I finish my point, please?
Sorry, yeah.
In that situation, there would be no mitigating factor because you don't think that it's another sentient being. And I want to bring up this qualia point because it's very important. Qualia is experience and not necessarily said experience or quantified experience. And there are correlates of experience, but there may be situations in which experience is being had and we are unaware that experience is being had, i.e. photosynthesis. We don't know whether or not trees experience photosynthesis. We just recognize them as physical attributes, the same as we recognize happiness or sadness as physical attributes of the brain or certain chemicals in the brain. So we don't know whether or not a tree actually experiences. It can't identify that it experiences, but we don't know that. So in that same position, you could say, if I were a tree, would I want to be chopped down? Probably not, but you'd still chop down that tree. Or if I was a vegetable, would I want to be eaten? Probably not. And you can apply that qualia to anything. That's why it's a fallacy.
Well, let me define what puts you as part of a more community then. The ability to have long-term goals. I mean, compare the human being to, I don't know, a rat or a dog. A human being can make long-term goals. A human being can come up, say, I would like to go to university, I'd like to get a stronger education, I would like to get married, I would like to have children, I would like to die peacefully. But other animals simply cannot do this.
But
They can be conditioned, they can be trained, they can be given ways of almost seem intimidated, but animals don't form long-term goals. We have many psychological experiments showing this.
Just to put this out there.
If you don't, so that's basically a good defining point. I mean, we know trees don't have long-term goals because, simply put, they have no goals to fulfill. They have never fulfilled any long-term goals or even strived towards them. Everything they've done has been based off some biology.
Okay. Not to cut in here, but yes, to what you were saying, though, realistic, I completely agree with your point that you were making. Also, if Strife was the male that I was supposed to forcibly rape, I would, no offense to Strife, but you are my ideal man to go after in that type of way. Just putting that out there.
Okay, and now let me address your point. What if the long-term, say, like I said, they're stranded on an island, right? They don't know when they'll be saved, but they're growing older. They have an abundant food supply. Let's say this is the hypothetical, but they don't know how long they're going to take. So they all come to the conclusion that they should rape this woman, even though she's unwilling, because it will propagate their species for longer and give them a higher chance of getting off the island. What in that situation? Is it still wrong because of the quality of the woman?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the difference between them.
Because they have long-term goals.
Yeah, and so does the woman. That's the major point in her long-term goals.
It doesn't matter because their long-term goals are longer because they
length of long-term goals does not make your goal more valuable.
Right.
If anything, it makes it worse. It makes it less valuable.
Well, whatever makes your, but that's what I'm saying. It's value arbitrarily determined.
2 hours.
Okay, I'm going to go, guys.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I apologize.
No problem.
Okay.
Again, please message either myself or preferably Strife over Skype to join in the call.
Not a problem. I apologize.
Please don't do that call thing again because you called when I heard it on Nihilist's end and my end. You were calling.
Yeah, I understand. It was actually by accident. I apologize.
Okay.
All right.
By the way, Lying Ghost Show, I heart Jade. She is my dream woman if she was like 30 years younger. Maybe 40.
I think someone's trying to get into your knickers.
Yeah.
You do remember she's American now, right, Strife?
I know, but we have a British crowd, and pretty much I think everyone knows what knickers are.
All I want to say to the British people out there, hey, governor!
Right, brilliant. Okay, well, when it comes to, I'm going to phrase this, when it comes to judging how we act in a certain situation, since the, let me get the state right, 17th, 18th century, Bentham and Mill, two of the most famous utilitarians or consequentialists probably of time, came up with something called the philosophic, or now known as the hedonic calculus. I'm not sure if you came across it, but just to explain it to those who haven't, it's a way of evaluating the good or the pleasure or the happiness or preference in my situation of an event. And they generally change, and they change among scholars, but they usually involve these 6 principles. And it's intensity, how strong is the pleasure, duration, how long the pleasure lasts, certainty or uncertainty, how likely or unlikely it is that the pleasure will occur, remoteness, how soon the pleasure will occur, fecundity, the probability that there'll be more goods achieved, purity, that it shall, that the probability that bad events shall proceed, and the extent of how many people it does good to.
But this is what I'm talking about.
Personally, I describe propinquity, But all this is just ways of evaluating how much good is done, how much pleasure rather, or happiness or preference is maximised. It's nothing to do with good at this point. So I mean,
qualia. You can't quantify these. You can't really identify what is more pleasurable. You can only identify correlates. Like in brain chemistry, dopamine has a correlate to a feeling of happiness. But that's like saying everyone should just inject heroin because it would be the most happiness at the most time, because it would release the most dopamine or mitigate the most dopamine from being received by other receptors.
Except we can, again, just apply the philosophic calculus, the hedonic calculus to the situation. And the point is, when we do heroin, the pleasure over time, the duration shortens. The extent is incredibly large, but the act is very impure, which means it will create a lot of unhappiness as a result. Indirectly, it will create a lot of unhappiness. So, for example, if everyone starts injecting heroin, then work rates shall go down. Most food will stop being produced. People will starve to death and not be able to take heroin, and people will become infinitely sadder and unhappy as a result.
The point I'm trying to make, though, it's not relevant to heroin specifically. The point I'm trying to make is to qualia, to experience, and that we have no metric for measuring it. You can't measure someone's happiness. Hold on.
Sorry, I just want to reiterate this. It's the philosophic calculus. It follows the intensity, duration, certainty, fecundity, purity, and extent of the action, and how the extent of the good preference is fulfilled, the extent of the purity of the preferences, the intensity of the preference, the duration of the preference, the certainty or uncertainty of the preference being fulfilled, etc., etc., etc. This is how we can quantify and start valuing how much good or badness is done from an action.
Can I just note, it sounds like to me that, like, the whole thing, like, can't we use consensus to tell if someone likes something or not?
Well, again, that's where extent comes in, how many people will be affected. But it's not enough. I mean, the example, there's a very fun, comical example, humorous example that's always given. And it's usually as a criticism, but it also opens up a lot of utilitarians' explanation or thesis. And it's the famous joke, 9 out of 10 people enjoy gang rape. Nice and intelligently phrased. Yeah. And the point is, and it's a very common criticism, the majority of people in that situation, the extent is high of people who will want to rape the victim, and it's the same example as you gave on the island. But most, if not all, utilitarians would say, probably most, would say that we shouldn't rape, and they need to come up with justification for this. And what we do is appeal to the 300-year-old, and obviously updated over time, hedonic or philosophic calculus. And we point out that the intensity of the displeasure for the woman, or man if the man's being raped, not going to be sexist there, is so much larger, infinitely larger, than the minute amount of pleasure the men gain from the rape, that it simply shouldn't be done. And then we include purity, of how impure and how much unhappiness will result, because people will be appalled at this rape taking place. The fecundity, the chances that more good shall come of it, is practically zero. And even the certainty of the rape, generally people fight back from rape, so someone's going to be unhappy even of the rapists. It's not, when we apply the calculus, it doesn't work.
But this is what I'm talking about. This is speculative, and it's speculative even with your definition, because you said you have these preferences. Well, if this person prefers to rape this woman, absolutely, and in all purity, and he does that, and then you only have the duration to go on. I guess the duration, which is the exact same duration as the pain. And if you want to argue that there are lasting psychological effects, you could say that there are lasting psychological effects from the initial rape in the first place. Yeah, I mean,
it's the point. If you can maximize all 7 values, you're completely and absolutely correct, then it should take place. However, in 99.99999% of circumstances, rape doesn't promote these goods. The intensity of the pleasure is minute, and the displeasure is extraordinary. The duration, duration, what am I about? The fecundity, the chance that there'll be good pleasures followed from it are incredibly low. In fact, there won't be any. And the purity, the chance that something bad will result of it, things that go against other people's preferences, are incredibly high. I mean, imagine if we lived in a society where everyone just raped each other. Because precedence has been set that rape is now fine. This would be a horrible society, and my preference would be very much against it. And I'm sure the vast majority of people agree with me, based on the fact that no society permits rape, or no modern liberal society permits rape.
Well, what about times of war?
This is where utilitarianism becomes very useful, but very cold.
No, I'm saying like they don't promote rape, but rape still occurs by the people of the society, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, in times of war, rape would generally still be frowned upon, but it may take place, and there's even circumstances where you might say it's good. I mean, one example that's common, well, relatively common. Imagine a situation where you're in part of a African society. And I think this is more in line with what Niles was getting at. Imagine you live in a society where these people have just caught an African woman running away. I mean, quite basically, or just any society really. It's an old example of John Wisdom. And because of her running away, we're going to have to punish her. And to do that, we're going to have to stone her to death, or kill her, or rape her. We could use to continue the rape theme, which is slightly dodgy. The tribe, the group of people decide, as part of their culture again, they're going to celebrate the guest coming in by letting you rape or kill or murder the woman. And if you don't do it, they're going to do it themselves, but they're also going to kill you. Now, the philosophic calculus at this circumstance would say, because the only alternative produces more displeasure, even though both circumstances it is better to not have the rape at all, when the money goes down on the table at the end of the day, the rape is unfortunately, raping is unfortunately the moral thing to do.
Right. Well, it all comes back down to qualia, and I've really been on this kick recently ever since someone else opened me up to it. And the thing is that we can't experience, we can only speculate upon the displeasure, and you can try to quantify it using things like duration and preference, and like perpetuity, which I guess you can sort of identify, but the actual feeling is impossible to know. So the displeasure is impossible to know, and the pleasure is also impossible to know in this hypothetical situation. You could have one guy that has like insane orgasms and just is the most pleasure filled that he's ever been, and say hypothetically they knock the woman out and they don't permit her to be conscious during this situation, then she literally feels no displeasure, especially in the occurrence, maybe afterward, depending on how they, I could just keep adding factors to this, hypothetical factors, but...
Well, let me say this. The point of utilitarianism is that there is circumstances which exist where we should do immoral things, or where we should do intuitively immoral things. So there are circumstances where we should kill someone, for example. There are circumstances in which we should steal. There are circumstances in which we should rape. There are circumstances in which we should declare war. They're rare.
Can we welcome Brian J. from the UK, and Brett's not answering.
Yeah, he's not. I guess he's not.
Who's Brett?
He's the person that we were on We were on his broadcast the other day with Ravenwolf. I think you were there.
Gary?
Yes.
No, his name's Brett.
No, that's Gary.
Oh, hi, Gary.
Hi there, Brian.
Brian, what is your let's ask
Hello?
what Brian's opinion is on this. No offense with you two, but we heard a lot of Steven. Let's see what Brian. What do you
Yeah,
think?
we definitely have.
Yeah. Brian, what do you think about secular morality or secular?
What do you mean by what do I think of secular morality?
Okay, what pops into your head with that term? What do you think of when you hear?
How do you decide what is good and bad?
I mean,
Or how do you decide what you ought to do?
Okay, I was just first seeing what he meant.
Personally or within society?
Personally.
Personally? Well, I've popped it in the chat room. Remember, we are driven by empathy and mutual self-interest of the group, social cohesion.
No.
We are hierarchical social mammals after all. It's inbuilt.
What do you need it for?
Okay.
Why?
You said personally or in society, and I don't understand.
In society, it comes down to a consensus, what the prevailing opinion is, as to what is considered permissible, what is considered objectionable and ostracizable. And sometimes, I say society consensus. That is only in modern times. In previous generations, social mores were dictated by the ruling alpha or alphas.
See, look.
Now, I'd state, by contrast, there is a universal prescription, which is a close equivalent to objective for means and purposes, that we should maximise the general preference, or we should maximise the preference of people. Do you have any
What does
thoughts?
that mean?
So,
Maximise the preference.
so everyone has preferences, don't they? Everyone wants something. Everyone wants different things. What is ethical is to maximise that. To maximise people's
the general rule
fulfillment.
of thumb when it comes to ethics is my rights stop where yours begin.
Well, I'd say there's circumstances in which my rights involve doing something to you. For example,
For
example, I have the right to. Let me think of a good example. I have the right to stop people stealing, for example, or I have the right to stop people conspiring to steal. Or I have the right
I would
to...
disagree with you. You don't have the right to stop people from stealing, but you do have the right, as a society, to impose sanctions on those that have decided to steal.
All right, well, let me give an example of what I mean then. Say I see you stealing a handbag from a woman. Let's go for the classical Superman, Spider-Man scenario.
Okay.
If you have stolen from this woman and now is running away, I have the right to tackle you to the ground and take the wallet or purse off you.
I wouldn't say you had the right to. I would say you have the opportunity and maybe either an internal or social obligation, if able, to do something. But I wouldn't say you had the right to.
All right, let me ask a question then. On what grounds do you have the right to steal?
Extreme poverty, hunger.
Okay, so let's say
For example, if I literally was on the verge of starvation, I would have absolutely no qualms about going into a field and stealing some farmer's crop, or poaching a rabbit, or just stealing a bottle of milk off the doorstep. It's survival.
Well, I don't understand. You said a moment ago your rights end when someone else begin.
Yes, but
you're saying you now have the right to...
First and foremost is the right to survive. And if your only option is to steal a pint of milk from a doorstep in order to put something in your belly to make it through the next day, then you have that right.
But
Well, let me give... Okay, sorry, you can speak.
Can we give Ace a chance, because we haven't heard what his take on
Hi, Ace.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. What exactly you guys want? You guys got me to this phone call. What do you guys?
Well, the topic is secular ethics, and we're asking for your opinion on it.
Yeah. My belief is under every and all circumstances, the strong survive. If it comes down to me or you lose.
Okay, but when I have 10 people all helping me out, I think we win.
I don't think you win if you have 20, stupid.
Well, you see, here's the thing, Steve. All right? Yeah, you may have 20 people object to my stealing that bottle of milk. As a society, you have the right to ostracize me.
Well, you have the right to take it back.
There's a situation, but are you saying that being ostracized isn't an infringement upon your rights? You say that what people decide as what people have rights to is also totally arbitrary. Like what?
Okay, well let me put that into context. Okay, I as an individual don't have the inherent right to impose myself as part of your group.
But you've stolen from us.
But you don't...
No. That's not the same thing.
Well, you said it was a right to survive, and you just said you don't have the right to impose your rights, or don't have the right to impose yourself onto us. So these two rights are contradicting now.
No. How is that? I don't see how that is a contradiction.
Okay, you have.
Okay. Now, if my only means of exercising that right is to steal, then I'm going to make that choice. Okay.
Okay, but
now, if I get caught stealing, then you, as a group, would have the right to extract some sort of sanction on me.
Do you have the right to infringe on other people's rights?
Like I said, my rights end where your rights begin. So yes, technically, I have exceeded my rights by stealing from you. However, my survival imperative.
No, let's finish. No, let's just focus on this then. You're saying part of your right to survive is the right to steal. So you have the right to steal, but at the same time, you don't have the right to impose your right. You impose yourself onto us, so you have the right to do something and yet lack that right.
What I'm trying to describe to you is a dynamic, fluid situation. That changes.
It sounds more like a contradiction.
Steve,
Okay, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to come up with an empirical, definitive law that is going to be applicable in all instances.
Okay,
yes.
Could
I would say that... Okay, sorry, yeah.
Can Realistic Analyst say what he wants to say, and then Steve can reply to what Brian just said?
Brian, I think what you're saying is funny, because can't you just arbitrarily decide what is a right to a person? Can I just go up to somebody and say, I have the right to kill you, and you have no fucking rights, and then kill them?
No, you're cherry picking from what I've said in order to back me into a corner. Now, what I said was, I, as an individual, am driven by, a different set of priorities to I as part of a group.
Right.
Now, I as part of a group exist in a structure of social ethics that have either been dictated by the alpha or arrived at by consensus from the group. Now, the individual and the group can, quite rightly, be in conflict because the individual may find themselves in a situation where their, air quote, rights or priorities are in direct conflict with the group.
Right, but this is what
Every situation like that is going to have to be looked at on its own individual merit. For example, somebody that is literally at their wit's end that does something out of desperation is not in the same category as somebody that has other options and just arbitrarily chooses a course of action.
Well, let me ask you this then. Are your rights absolute?
No, nothing is absolute.
Are you absolutely... Wait.
Define a right. Define a right. Because I always class rights as absolute.
I actually consider rights to be granted privileges.
That's what I would say too. I would say that's why the government grants. That's why the government explicitly states the rights, because if they didn't, no one would know what privileges they have.
All right. Can I just say this then? I would class a granted privilege as absolute. So I have been granted privilege to be free from torture from the European Convention of Human Rights, or the right to be free from torture.
What if you...
Well, obviously, you guys have only ever been in an environment...
Yeah, you may find
you guys
yourself...
have only ever been in an environment where you've had the government control you. So
the government doesn't control me. I control
an environment where you didn't have a babysitter, because Mr. Strife decided to say that that's why the government gives us, like, he needs a babysitter.
No. I'm not saying...
Let me say this first. Let me say this.
Wait.
How would you guys survive on the streets?
No, wait.
If you were
how would I
hypothetically homeless and ended up on the streets, how are you guys going to survive an environment like that if you're waiting for somebody to set the rules for you?
In the exact same way as everyone in history in the exact same circumstances have done. Form a community, form the equivalent of a government, and it happens. Governments do not control people. People control governments. That's the principle of a democratic system.
Unfortunately, Steve, that is an ideal. If you look at history, you will find situations and events where somebody has said, you know what, that pisses me off. Come on, boys, we're going to grab a posse together and we're going to sort this fucking shit out. And they do it.
Yeah,
and the world changes.
But this is the principle at play is, okay, imagine the circumstance where we don't have a government. Imagine the situation where we don't have a government again in a state of nature. What will happen is people will infringe on other people's rights excessively and repeatedly, which people don't want. I will assume that people don't want them to be raped and killed. I'm just going to assume that that's quite fair. And at the same time, sorry, yeah.
Just because I want to point out that you said in a society where there is no government, then people will be infringing on other people's rights all the time. But you identified rights as granted privileges, so no one can infringe on anybody's rights because everyone grants everyone privilege to do anything they want, right? The city with no government.
Okay, well...
Exactly, just by interacting with each other, we have engaged in a social contract whereby I implicitly grant you the same rights of interaction that I am expecting to receive.
I would agree. I mean, there are two types of rights. There's natural rights and there's societal rights. There's rights that we have created by society and rights we have naturally. So we have naturally the right to consent and the right to self-government. These rights simply cannot be taken away from us. There's no situation where I cannot protest about my
what you are talking about are sophisticated social constructs that have been arrived at intellectually, which is a long way away from the natural processes.
Right then, let me rephrase it, man. Let me rephrase what I was on about, then. Imagine a state of nature. People infringe on other people's preferences repeatedly, and I will assume that people do not prefer to be raped and killed. I think that's a fair assumption to make. Do we stand with me? So are we good with this so far?
I would honestly say the natural state is more of chaos. Like, instead, government's more controlled. Like, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not like it's like anarchy in a sense. If you go by nature, because.
Well, yes, the state of nature is by definition anarchy.
Yeah.
Just to make that clear.
Yeah, yeah. But
the point is, you'll have two events taking place. You'll have people infringing on other people's preferences repeatedly, and on top of that, you'll have people taking revenge and retribution for infringements on their preferences in excessive manners.
Okay.
So,
Yes,
for example, if you steal from
Steve.
me, I will kill you.
Steve,
Now, the point is,
an
can I add to that, please?
inflation.
Can I just finish my point here? Because there's not much else to go from it, so I just want to finish it off. The point is, from this situation, people will realise the best way to protect their preferences and promote their preferences is to form a community in which they'll form a group and they'll say to each other, these are what I don't want you to do to me, and in response I won't do this to you. And that's how we form governments and morality.
Okay, now to add to that.
That is actually an intellectually... Sorry, Neil, I just want to address what Steve's just said, and then I'll let you go.
Wait, Brian, before you do that, I'm going to kick, if it's okay, Jade and Phony out because we have too many people. Is that okay with you two?
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
That's fine, yeah.
Wait. Don't kick him because Venom Fang X just left.
What?
Ran just left.
What just happened?
Ran just left.
Did you say why?
No. I guess that he wanted to lay the smackdown on somebody.
Should I recall
That guy is hilarious.
You mean when he said pansies?
Yeah, just everything about his way of speaking is awesome.
He was like, you bunch of pansies.
He gets so pissed, and it's just amusing as hell.
Okay, what were you saying before, Brian?
Right, all I was going to say was, whilst I would agree with your intellectual assessment of what we are likely to do, should overnight government structures be removed, yes, there would be a period of chaos. However, you only need to look at other social animals, herd animals, to see that inherent with the herd behavior, you have structuring. So whether it's formalized or not, the only thing you're talking about is how long it would take to reformalize the social structures that we would fall into inherently. We would see natural leaders rising up, even just on the level of, okay, everything's gone to shit, we need water, we need power, we need food, you organize that, you do this, you do that, and literally you have ad hoc social structuring.
Outside that, though, you have inalienable rights that are given to humanity. I mean, the best way that they were actually outlined were in the Declaration of Independence.
They were not given, they were granted.
Yeah, I mean, even John Locke, Rousseau is the best example here, specifically points out the difference between natural rights, which are rights we naturally have. So, for example, the rights to consent. So, for example, in no situation can I be forced to be happy in a situation, or in no situation can I not rail against the position I'm in. And artificial rights, like the right to be free from assault, or the right to self-determination.
In essence, the right to be free from assault, all that is society sanctioning repercussions should you be assaulted. It gives you the right to redress inactions against, adverse actions against you.
Yes. I mean, a natural right, for example, is the right to redress. The societal right is...
The point I'm trying to make is that having that right does not inherently protect you. What it does is it grants you the right of redress.
Well, what the right does is it's a formal explanation of the informal rule that the vast majority of people adhere to, which is the right, which is that people, can I just finish, which is the fact that, I don't have much left of it, which is the fact that I won't, for example, punch you, and in return you want to punch me.
Yeah, but that whilst that is inherent in the social contract between us, it doesn't literally protect you from me suddenly or somebody else deciding of their own volition to walk up behind you and put an axe in the back of your head.
I'm gonna say
It doesn't
there's not a
protect
single...
you. All it does is it gives you the backing of society to seek redress for that action.
I mean, this is the thing with natural rights.
Can I address that?
Wait.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Steve, let realistic suck, because god damn, you spoke too much.
Well, okay. The thing about that is it does indirectly protect them because it also acts as a deterrent. So it does, because if people know that there are ramifications, they are less likely to do something. So it does indirectly, not 100%. Like, I agree with what you're saying, but I'm just saying there are parameters that you need to consider, right? Because it depends on a person's mental state. There are rational deterrents.
I mean, it's not like these.
I understand what you're saying, and I would agree that yes, superficially, yeah, and inherently, one would hope it does have a deterrent factor or deterrent effect. However, one thing we know, seeing these things in action, where we have, for example, the death penalty, we actually have higher numbers of crimes that result in the death penalty if convicted. So not much of a deterrent.
Well,
the point of rights, they're not descriptive. They're not saying people cannot do this anymore. That would be insane. No proponent of rights of any kind argue that, and neither do I. I mean, the point of a right is to make official, essentially, the fact that we, as people, say you can't do this, as in you should not do this. This is wrong. You're not allowed.
Which is exactly what I've been saying. It's the formalization of a social contract granting you redress should somebody infringe upon you against the social consensus.
Well, yes, it's not like these rights grant you immunity to said acts. They're just, what that means, the government's on your side. If this happened, the government's on your side, right? Pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if someone's infringing upon your freedom of speech, the government will, by definition of their rights they granted, be on your side. I mean, unless you were actually making shit up, but you know, if it be the true thing, then yes, they will be on your side.
The point is, these rights, I think it is too narrow. The point is, these rights don't suddenly exist only after the event. These rights exist before, and they exist as a statement.
No, that's the thing, though. They could exist. They could exist
as a statement.
This is going to require validation. If you are saying that these things exist as as absolutes, they exist regardless of what we formalize, then you're going to have to substantiate that.
Sure. They exist as statements of this is what we say as society, if you take part, you're not allowed to do.
Which, by definition, it exists as a formalization of a decision. It is not an absolute in itself, therefore it didn't exist before we formalized it.
Well, sorry, by absolute I mean there's no situation in which you're not allowed to break the rights, and I wouldn't say that type of right exists. Or I would say there's in all situations breaking this right is something.
Or we formalize them.
We make them into a document that the government formalizes, as in it's backed up by the government.
Yes, which is formalizing these decisions. They are not pre-existing before we formalize them, which was the statement.
They existed as ideas.
Well, let me give you an example. In piracy, in 18th century piracy, obviously these pirate communities existed outside of the law. They were technically illegal. However, and they still exist now in Somalia. But at the same time, when we observe how they act in strangely specific ways. They act in ways, for example, in the 18th century, these communities or the ships all voted, essentially, and consented to the people who's in charge. Now, there was no pirate written formal code that if you went to America or Britain or Spain and you looked on a board, you could see it written up and ticked off by the government. But at the same time, there were still these general understandings, this informal rights, I would call it, an informal law, that, for example, if you do not like the captain in charge of your boat, you have a right to mutiny. And the captain also does not, for example, have the right to kick off any men he wants without fair trial, without just reasoning behind it. I mean, I would say that you don't need it written down and formalised for it to be a right that's accepted, as long as it is accepted. It would be a right.
Okay, well, see, here's the thing with that particular example. The reason why there was formal acceptance of, for example, the right to mutiny, it's a case of, okay, we're going to have to come up with something that is going to be outside our control in any case. So we're faced with two situations. We either say, okay, the mutiny is illegal, and we string up every last person on that ship who was involved in the mutiny and try and resurrect the captain so that he can be put back in charge of his ship. Or we accept the fact that, okay, captain was an arsehole, the crew mutinied, and now we have a functioning ship. So, you know, ad hoc, proctor hoc, yeah, when it comes to formalizing legislation, very much the survivors dictate what gets formalized.
Well, I just think it's so arbitrary, you know? Like what?
It is arbitrary.
It's more like
that's the way human beings work.
It's,
right.
I mean, the whole thing.
But it's not arbitrary. It's based on what people want.
It's not arbitrary.
The thing is, the thing with the whole
reasoning.
Brian, can I just state with the whole thing? The whole thing with the boat thing, you know, mutiny and stuff. You're in the middle of fucking nowhere. The government can't protect the captain. Pretty much, it's whatever the captain says goes, unless the people actually gang up on the captain and kill him and throw him overboard, which is just common sense. You know, you have a mob mentality, throwing over the captain.
Well, if that was true, then no matter what the leader was, whoever was in charge, would at the same time be able to do whatever he
He would not be the
wants.
leader anymore, though.
Yes.
A leader
Yes.
is only
You see-
a leader when there follows. When people follow
Yeah.
him. If people stop following him, there's no leader. The leader is overthrown.
And how does the leader stay in charge? Well, he exchanges these prescriptions, exchanges these what I would call rights, what people want, what he says everyone should do to one another, and people follow it, and that's how people accept that and stay in and he stays in charge. It's a combination of him forming this prescription, this contract, and people consenting to it.
Yes, but if he's a
and
total...
if you consent to these contracts, then that's your right. You
but
have
if he's a total
rights that form.
if he's a total asshole, though, what is that? What do you do?
Well, you have the natural right to self-determination, and a natural right is a right that is descriptive rather than prescriptive. It's a right that simply cannot not exist. You can, in any circumstance, you can decide, I do not want to be a part of this, and secede.
Okay,
the United, I mean, just to give you an
let's-
example, the United States is based on this natural right of self-determination.
All right,
I mean, it's a common one.
I never
Let's-
actually
let's
heard
look
of
at-
that.
let's look
Wait.
at- let's look
Can
at a
he
couple
just
of those.
define what natural right to self-determination is? Because I never actually heard of that word ever before.
Give me a second, because United Nations...
Okay, so just
Joe, you can
whilst
just respond
you're
to that
looking
in a second.
up, just a couple of things, a couple of examples that point to that pretty much directly. You try telling somebody who has grown up in a culture, for example, over in the Japans, and for thousands of years their ancestors have been ruled by a samurai overlord who has the right of life and death. How are you going to convince such a person that they have the inherent right of self-determination? They're going to look at you blankly and say, no, my right to exist is determined by my Lord Takanashi up on the hill. And you're going to have your work cut out. You're going to have your work cut out for you. Secondly, the right to exist. The moment you have somebody who comes along and arbitrarily chops your head off, that right has been taken away. They are not inherent.
Right.
Okay. Sorry, can I just...
Let's address what you think about secular ethics and how one would be good without God, that kind of thing.
Sorry, what? Me?
Yeah, you.
No, atheist. You're
there we go. It was muted.
Yeah, since you were a former fundamentalist, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah.
Well, speaking from that respect, I guess that narrows it down a little bit for me. In fundamentalism, goodness, holiness, righteousness, morality is legislated. For instance, love thy neighbor as thyself, or like I often say, the saddest commandment in the New Testament is husbands, love your wives. Can you call it love? I mean, I love you because I'm told to love you. I can't say I don't love you because God commands me not to. That's not real love. That is a regimented false holiness. I mean, true goodness flows from the person. It's better for you to be honestly, if you don't like somebody, it's better for you to be honest about it and say you don't like them than to pretend. And you're not doing anybody any favor, least of all yourself. So in fundamental... Oh, go ahead, what?
I was going to say least of all yourself.
Yeah, least of all. Because you get stuck in this trap of false holiness in that I'm always doing this. I'm always pretending to like people that I hate because I'm commanded to. And nobody's honest, and everybody's pretending to be everybody's friend. And everybody's pretending to be good because, it says do this because it's good, do that because it's good. And nobody has an opportunity to just do good because it's a natural outflow of the person that you are, the person that you've become.
So how do you decide how to comport yourself then? I mean, because, okay, you take yourself out of the religious context and they're telling you what you need to do, what actions you need to do, and then you're in a societal context where they tell you what actions to do. So it's a sub-government kind of thing. There's a church government and then there's a state government. So how do you decide how to comport yourself in accordance with even with laws that may exist that you don't agree with?
Well, everybody learns how to relate to other people in social context. I mean, and if we're honest with each other, we have an opportunity to say, don't talk to me like that, you're being a douche, or whatever. But if people are honest, then we can honestly have a conversation about, how we interact. But in a religious context, you just have it written down on paper. You're not supposed to say those words. And that's just fake in every respect. But and I get fundamentalists on my channel and saying, criticize me for using the word fuck or shit or whatever, and saying, oh, your message gets lost because you say bad words. But
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So would you say that religious structures and legal structures are both formalized social cohesion?
Well, I think in different respects, because a legal framework has to do with people interacting with other people, whereas a religious moral framework has this kind of man's relationship to a god thing built into it, and that's arbitrary. I mean, you can tell how other people feel about laws, but you can't tell how some god feels, so it's just a commandment. It's quite different in that respect.
Yeah, but literally speaking, they are both formalized social cohesion. Albeit
yes,
that one's fixed and the other's dynamic, perhaps.
But religious morality is not primarily concerned with interpersonal commandments and relationships in that respect. Religious morality is mostly based on the idea of sin, and this is what displeases God. Not don't do this in society because it hurts other people. I mean, other people can get hurt in religious morality, and give a shit. I mean, you bigotry and hatred and mean things are said. As long as the God is pleased, it's okay.
Pretty much it means don't fuck off God, don't piss off God, or you're fucked, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. That's it. It's that what God thinks matters, and even though a good person who isn't predisposed to hating, say, someone for their sexual orientation, they read it in their theology tells them, that God hates that kind of thing, and so okay, well I got to please God, and so I got to get out there and publicly say that I agree with that. I don't like that kind of thing either. And I know a lot of people who are good who wouldn't hate homosexuals otherwise.
I guess in the sense that he's talking about, it's social cohesion within a group, because although it is arbitrary, you all agree with your group about this premise of the God deciding your morality, right? So it's social cohesion within a group, I suppose.
Exactly.
Something that I want to address though, because we were talking about rights earlier and what people have the rights, and like there's something that's going on in the United States recently, and that's the marijuana movement, I would call it. And you're saying that they go along with the. It's kind of hard to get both of your opinions on this, but it's interesting to me what you think, because you're talking about what the government arbitrates as to be a moral construct, and how they should change. So what is your guys' opinion on the whole marijuana issue?
Well, before actually touching on the marijuana issue itself, it's interesting that the word arbitrate actually is founded on the word arbitrary. It has the same root. Right.
Yeah, I know.
When it comes to the actual marijuana question itself, I think you have to look more to the politics than the ethics, because if you look at the politics around the prohibition of marijuana, particularly, you have it coinciding with the emergence of the petrochemicals industry and the pharmaceutical industry. Okay, and historically, marijuana and hemp have been sources of effectual herbal medications and textiles. So you had legislation being lobbied from two industries that were growing, that needed a foothold in the consumer market. And that, I think, has a greater bearing on any ethic consideration in this question.
What the question that I'm thinking about is, because we were talking about rights, and we were talking about what people can mitigate, what rights, and how that happens. And when you're talking about marijuana, and we're talking about there being a social cohesion kind of thing, and you have society divided in half, almost essentially in half, as in the United States, almost essentially half, like 52 to 48%. Does the government then have the right to do what you say it does, or when does society get to?
Well, that depends on.
The problem is,
on the actual political system that you're talking about.
Can I speak my own opinion about this?
If you're talking about a representative democracy, then the representatives are going to be driven primarily by what's going to keep them in office, and secondarily by representing their electorate. Now, when you consider that you've got corporations lobbying governments directly with huge war chests, then you're talking more of a political issue and an economics issue stemming back to consumer marketplace, rather than the actual social contract as decided by the populace itself.
They mask it. They pretend it's a moral question, and it's not.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if it's the government's job to be out of economics, which it is, then it should be a economical, like a company thing, like if it takes place in the economy. But the problem is, hemp is being outlawed by a few corporations. It's being outlawed because of corporations don't want to lose profits, which means, is the corporations having more power over the government than the government of itself, and of what was the purpose of the economy of the country itself?
Sorry, did you say it's not the role of government to be involved in economics?
No, I mean this. Pretty much government, the original purpose of American government, if I remember, was to be an unregulated economic system. Right?
Free market.
Yeah, free market. The thing is, it's not a free market if corporations are taking over then. It's a limited market. Meaning corporations would grant certain certain goods being made, like what with marijuana being an example, I guess. They're not allowed.
This is the problem when you have.
I'd be tempted to describe it. Sorry, Steve. I'll let you go in a second. I'd be tempted more to describe it as a biased free market, and the bias is heavily in those that have enough money to throw at the government in lobbying.
Well,
and the general electorate doesn't have the money to throw at the government in lobbying. It only has, grassroots protests and various other petitions and mechanisms available to it, including the elections.
Well, this is the problem with. This is the problem. I mean, there's a difference. There's a distinction that's usually like to be brought up between people like myself, but the difference between actually existing capitalism and true capitalism. So you have true capitalism, which is the idea that every individual can bring something to the marketplace to exchange for its worth and continue producing. And you get the current situation, which is where people can arguably bring some of what they produce to the marketplace, in which incredibly rich, wealthy people dictate what that is worth, form certain laws or influence laws to stop you producing as much or help them produce more, and basically divert the amount of wealth you can produce and have access to in favour of themselves. So a large-scale corporatism, except inverse. Instead of a government influencing industry in order to promote freedom of the individual, industry is influencing government in order to help the industries out.
Wait, Neil, why'd you invite Steve?
No, kick Steve. What are you doing? Kick him out.
Is this Steve Price?
Yeah,
I didn't do it.
We're having a rational discussion here. I don't want it to become...
Let's just make it clear then now.
Neil, what are you
doing?
Can
we stop inviting... Neil, stop inviting people. I mean, if another person does get invited, I think we have good grounds on removing you from the conversation, purely because we want to keep a limited amount of people in order to stop... in order to promote rational discourse.
Right. I invited Brett Keane on, and we haven't recognized him yet. But the topic of discussion is secular ethics, and so we were currently engaged in how government plays a role in secular ethics. So if you have an opinion on that, Brett, we'd like to hear from you.
Oh, Brett's finally on. Oh, hello, Brett.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the invite, and I think that I'm going to sit back for a moment and just listen to you guys. I think that I learn more whenever I listen. Go ahead.
You want to link to the channel?
Sure.
Okay.
The streaming live thing, I've already got that.
Oh, okay. That's what I was asking.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the situation that I was more curious about is we were talking about the individual rights as opposed to the social cohesion rights. And in that situation, how do you go about propagating your individual rights into the social cohesion rights? How do you go into promulgating that is a better word. How do you cultivate that sort of idea, essentially? Because obviously the marijuana debate is a situation in which it is very conflicting. So I'm asking, what I'm basically saying is, do people have the right to smoke marijuana, or does the government have the right to?
I mean, when you're talking about that social cohesion issue, your personal rights versus the rights of society. I mean, yeah, there's a rational discourse to be had. There's a give or take. You should be willing to. But where marijuana prohibition is concerned, the United States especially has solved the issue of prohibition in the early 20th century. I mean, with the ending of alcohol prohibition, all of those arguments apply, and more so, as was pointed out earlier, the medical benefits of marijuana, which alcohol does not have. I mean, the United States just needs to be consistent where its moral values are concerned. Its social moral values, where alcohol is concerned, can be applied to marijuana easily and easier.
Dee makes a very interesting comment in the chat with regards the historical context of cannabis in America. Can I read it?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
She says, cannabis hemp was even used as legal tender in most of the Americas from 1631 until the early 1800s. The reason for making it legal tender was to encourage farmers to grow more. You could then pay your taxes with cannabis hemp throughout America for over 200 years. If you did not grow hemp during periods of shortages, you could be jailed. Now, I'm not sure of the specifics, but there was something very similar to that in the UK for a while. And yeah, as a landowner, you were obliged to grow hemp for the rope industry, for the medicinal industries, etc. And another interesting point is that the hemp used for fabrics and medicinal hemp are the same species, but they are different strains. So, you know, they are two different plants to all intents and purposes. But politically, cannabis, hemp, has played a very large part in economics historically. And as I said, it was in the 50s and 60s and the emergence of two industries that changed that landscape. So,
okay. Well, I think
it's just an interesting sub-point to, you know, the narrative as to what's going on and why.
Steve,
I think those two general tiers of how you can address when you get legislation, and there's one value which I think almost universally should be maximised, or liberty or freedom, or just generally at least should be kept in consideration. And there's two types of it. There's negative and there's positive. There's the negative freedom. I'm just using that clarification by Isaiah Berlin because they're useful. There's the negative freedom, or the freedom from it, the freedom from intervention from government, big business or other people telling you what to do. So, for example, I have negative freedom in the fact that I can go outside and drive and go to the shops and buy food and come back all without intervention, for example, or someone or the government stopping me on the road and say I can't go through here. And there's positive liberty, positive freedom. So, for example, which is the freedom of self-mastery, the idea that in order to promote my own liberty, to be able to pursue my own goals, I am given certain things. For example, education is mandatory. Universal education promotes positive liberty because when educated, I gain many more options of what to do and what I can do when free. And so the best thing to do is try to apply that with, for example, marijuana. If you go, for example, like with, I don't know, extremely addictive drugs like ecstasy, when you take it, you're considerably restricting your ability to self-master. You can become wholly dependent on the drug. Your freedom of being able to get off it becomes incredibly limited. Your freedom to act and spend your money becomes incredibly limited because of that. And as such, that's the justification for keeping it criminalised. But with marijuana, of course, it's not that strongly addictive, and even when on it, it's not horrible to your positive liberty. And it's obviously an infringement on your negative liberty, it's an infringement on what you're allowed to do if you're forced to not be able to buy it through legal means. But the second tier, which is obviously... Yeah, go ahead.
Quick question. When we look at legislation, most of the legislation controlling the behavior within society, most of them are prescriptive laws, you know, prohibitive laws. You can't do this, you can't do that. Or to be more accurate, if you're caught doing this, then these sanctions follow.
Yeah. I mean, it's true in a lot of circumstances. For example, you shall not kill. That's a protection, for example, of your, or a protection of your negative liberty and positive liberty. Because I mean, they're not mutually exclusive. It's protection of my negative liberty if you kill me, because obviously I'm no longer free to do as I want. You just killed me. I mean, it's quite straightforward. And at the same time, I no longer have freedom of self-mastery because I'm dead. I can't choose what. I don't have a wide range of what to do when I'm buried in the ground, unfortunately. But the other problem, the other thing that always needs to be taken into consideration, which I think is the major part that's always neglected when it comes to marijuana laws, is what is actually the effect of it being illegal. And when marijuana is illegal, it simply doesn't reduce the use of it. If anything, it may even increase it.
Oops.
Call dropped.
Don't know what happened there.
Technical difficulties. Sorry, technical. Oh no. Get it. What the fuck is he?
Strife, you recalled everybody, man.
Yeah, I know. I'm getting it out. I'm doing it.
This is exciting.
Yeah. Oh well.
Okay, can we have some tension music?
I don't know. But yeah.
I mean, the other thing that's always missed out in the debate, I'll just speak while we get everyone back.
Who's calling you now? Out of curiosity.
Yeah.
Also, Sam wants to join the discussion. Sorry, I forgot.
And Brett was in here as well, I believe.
Brett Keane, yeah.
Did he leave?
No, I think he got
on purpose
with everybody else.
Yeah.
No, I know he was kicked, but...
Yeah. Oh, while we're waiting for everybody, DprJones asks an interesting question. Can an ant commit murder?
Ooh. I'd personally say... Ooh, that's a good question, actually.
I have a good answer as well.
You go first, then let me have a think. I'll probably pile on yours.
Yes. It is possible for an ant to commit murder if the colony that the ant lives in actually has a formalized social structure.
But honestly...
that's similar to the one I was going to go down, to be fair.
Wait, I would say no.
I'd say because the ant isn't sentient.
Yeah, I would say no,
it can't form moral obligations and rights and desires onto people.
Other species...
It cannot commit murder in the sense of it cannot do something morally wrong.
Well, I was gonna
Other species have various morality built into them. I mean, piranhas don't eat each other, and chimps treat each other in a certain way, and they have a social structure. And within that structure, I mean, with our understanding of morality is human morality. It's a
we're not the only creature with ethics.
Okay, well, I generalize it then.
Us.
I generalize it then to the ability to have long-term goals, or the ability to be rational or sentient. You have to be a rational being in order to have morality.
But I would say ants can't murder because technically an ant is just a drone. A drone doesn't do anything out of its own, well, it doesn't have free will, it's just a drone.
But if the ant colony has a formalized social structure, if it has rules...
Well, an ant can't.
Yeah, because it's a drone.
But ant colonies do.
I'd say an ant...
do have these structures. They don't work as individuals.
The key word there is that they're not formalized. They don't do it of their own volition.
They do it because of whatever the queen commands.
I mean, let me give you an example. Let's give an example. Let's say hundreds of balls are dropping at the same time, and we write up a formally on a board that if this ball does not drop at this certain time, then it is committing an immoral action. I mean, we wouldn't. I mean, I'm taking a ridiculous example here because it's because of the point of it. It's wholly determined. It's wholly determined by the laws of physics.
Yeah, DPR brought
so we cannot class it as immoral because it simply does not have free will. It does not have the ability to choose what it does.
I think that...
But by the very act of laying out the example, you've laid out a formalized set of rules by which any individual that doesn't conform to those rules is liable for sanction.
Any person doesn't conform to that rule. Any rational person.
No. Any individual. So
I wouldn't say that's correct. Then I'd say that's false. You need to have free will to be moral.
If you could be finished, we do have and I know I'm interrupting, but sue me for being a hypocrite. I'm human. But if we look at our formalized structure, we do see instances whereby individuals find themselves outside the law through no fault of their own, not through their volition, but by force of circumstance. So you could apply an arbitrary ruling to any group of things, and by definition, any individual that falls outside that conformity would be liable to sanction.
Well, let me give two different examples then, to explain what I think the difference between people being liable and people not being liable to sanction. Let's give an example of someone shooting someone for a moment, and we'll just give two different specific points of this. Or I will. One situation is basically one of the famous World War II situations that Sartre uses. Imagine you're a German private, and you have 10 Jews standing in front of you, and your officer tells you to shoot them all. And because he tells you to shoot them all, and if you don't, he'll shoot them and you. If you shoot them all, many German soldiers argued that, or privates rather argued, and officers in the same situation argued, that they're not responsible, they're forced by external situations to kill them. And let's give another example, and this one is obviously fictional. Imagine you've got a man in front of you to be killed again, and because of some robotic thing on your arm, which is not there out of your own will, and you're trying to take it off, forces your arm to move in such a way that you pull up your arm, you point the gun at them, the machine forces you to point the gun at them, and the machine forces you to pull the trigger and shoot them. And there's two different circumstances here. And the difference is what Sartre calls as authenticity, or mauvais foi, bad faith. In the first circumstance, you're denying your free will and blaming it on an external force. In the second circumstance, you're specifically trying not to shoot them. Your authenticity is intact, but you still have to shoot them anyway because your arm is literally being forced to move in that situation.
Okay, well, in both situations, I mean, and all you've really done is highlight one of the reasons why arbitrary and to arbitrate form from the same root. Because it is arbitrary, it requires a subjective, decision when evaluating the situation and trying to, come up with a just means of moving forward.
Well, I don't think it's subjective, the fact that there are two different circumstances here. One, the former being you choosing to do something, the latter being you not choosing to do something. And if you don't choose to do something...
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Steve, can you
go ahead,
please can you please make it to two sentences to give your response? Because shit. But yeah, okay, now go, Atheist Coffee.
Oh, I didn't want to butt in. Well, I feel the topic has wandered off of the question. The question was, can an ant commit murder? And there's a lot of philosophizing going on, and the conversation wanders into all different areas. But what I haven't heard is a scientific answer to this question, because there is a great deal of science in regards to the social structure of ant colonies. I mean, they have social rules in regards to their own interactions. And I think we can learn a lot about human morality in studying, and I think it's been done, studying ant morality and morality in other species. I mean, can an ant commit murder? I mean, they work as a group, as a collective, and if there's a flood, they band together, and the ones on the bottom drown. If they want to cross a river, they just start piling in, and some of them drown, and it's not about individuality. So their morality, if you could call it that, is quite a bit different from ours.
Yeah, and there's another interesting observation from the natural world as well in other social species, and that is when a member of the group does cross the line, then they will retreat. They will receive some form of sanction, be it a dog pile, and everybody just jumps on them and beats them for a few bruises. Or, proactive ostracization from the entire group, and you know what? Get the fuck out of here. We don't care whether you live or die. You're on your own.
Well,
And sometimes the individual will be brutally murdered or
you should
killed.
Have stopped there, man.
Can we have this new rule? Can we have this rule pretty much? Whoever speaks after they're done speaking their statement, can they tell whoever they want to respond to their statement, say their name, so then we won't have this stupid, button in and stuff.
I'm done.
Yeah, because it's really hard. It's really annoying because everyone thought you were done, and
Yeah, I'm done.
Well, Sam has something he
Let
wants to
Sam
say.
speak, yeah.
Yeah, like
Well,
that.
I feel like we're all missing the point here. And it's just kind of funny to me because we're not actually looking at what murder is from a legal standpoint. What is murder? What are we considering murder? Well, it's the unlawful killing of someone with intent. So that should be the question. Is no one is saying that ants can't kill other ants. I don't think anyone here is going to disagree with that. But the question is intentionality. There's a reason why there's a difference between manslaughter and murder. It's because manslaughter has no intentionality. So is there, can we actually say that ants have intentions? Well, that's kind of difficult to say philosophically because, what are we defining as intentions?
Well,
I
honestly don't think ants could do it because, as I said, male ants are drones. They don't have a will of their own. They're pretty much subjective to whatever the hell the queen wants, right?
Well,
The situation.
Let me just say something here, please. It all goes. Let's go back to the law point very slightly. Killing someone with intent. Since Clarence Darrow's trial with Leopold and Loeb, we know very clearly that intent must include rational intent, as in you must rationally decide. You must decide to do something. If you do it out of, for example, passion, we have a specific type of murder. We call it killing with a passion in the UK. The point is, if you don't have reason, this is where I think the difference is. If you don't have reason, if you're an ant, for example, you cannot murder because you lack reason. You're wholly determined by your environment. And if you're determined purely by the things that happen around you, and you don't have a choice, then you cannot be blamed. So you cannot be morally at fault. Of course, can you kill an ant? If that's what we're trying to get at, then obviously yes. And can an ant kill? Yes. But can an ant kill with intent? No, because an ant cannot intend.
Okay, can we go with closing statements about can an ant kill or can an ant not kill with intent? That's pretty much the final statements, and we'll talk about more of this in the after show, okay? If that's okay.
All right.
And Brett can join us in the after show, where he can talk and such. So let's go with Steve. You're gonna go last. Let's go with Brett, since Brett was mostly listening in, and I bet he had something insightful to say.
I got to be honest with you. I didn't expect to come into a discussion where people are trying to get philosophical about if it's okay for an ant to kill another ant. How we compare the value to that of humans and their existence. So I really don't know what to say at this point. I'm just listening.
Okay, I guess Sam?
I'd just like to say that, I agree with Brett on a lot of that. I don't necessarily see the relevance, but it's always interesting to discuss. And we just have to be careful not to get ahead of ourselves when discussing this.
Okay, Realist Alice?
I think, reading on the Vaughn Live, what's going on, I think we missed the point because he said we were missing the point. I think he is talking about, can a person murder an ant? So I think we just went on a really strange discussion that was irrelevant. And the answer would be yes if it's illegal to kill ants, and no if it's not illegal to kill ants, right?
Okay, Atheist Coffee? No, wait, Sam. Wait. Fuck, I just forgot.
Atheist Coffee.
Yeah, Atheist Coffee.
I don't know. I'm along for the ride. I'm not sure exactly what to say here.
Okay, Brian?
Strictly speaking, the question was, could I, DprJones, murder an ant? No, is the simple and sane answer to that, because there is no prohibition in law against killing ants. So
you're going to get angry letters from PETA.
You could not murder an ant. However, where I saw the discussion going was along the lines of, would it be possible for an ant to murder? Yeah, and that would only be possible if the ant has a formalized legal structure in which murder is defined, and it crosses that line.
Okay, and Steve?
Yeah, I think can you kill an ant? I think yes, obviously you can. You just get your foot and you stand on it. It works quite well. But can you murder an ant? Can you morally? Can you legally? Is it legally wrong to stand on an ant? No. I think the more interesting question, of course, comes of can an ant kill you? And I think because ants simply cannot choose, cannot think rationally, cannot make decisions, they are wholly determined by their environment. Simply put, ants cannot commit moral actions, and I class murder as murder in a moral sense cannot be committed by an ant as a result.
Okay, and this is the Lying Ghost Show, and we'll be on in about 10 minutes. So sit back, grab some coffee, or whatever the hell you want to do, and see you then.
Good idea. I'll go make some tea.